Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Nioh DLC blind playthrough. Or is it? Yeah guys, there was a technical difficulty. So this is the beginning of the Dragon of the North. This is the cutscenes that shows when you first start the game. And unfortunately the first 38 minutes of this footage is blind, but the commentary that went with it is now lost. I'm sorry about that guys. I don't know how this happened. It's one of those weird things. If it was my fault, then I would happily be like, I was a retard, I did this wrong. There's a nice white foreign woman in this Japanese land. She might be important later on. And instead of choosing my microphone for Audacity to draw sound from, you know, my blue snowball, it chose my speakers. I've been using Audacity for about 6 years now, and I've never had to change this. It's never preset it back to normal. Before, it was perfectly fine. I don't know what was different, I don't know what changed, I don't know what happened, but it didn't prioritize it. So I have 38 minutes of silence, of just a fucking line with no wavelength on it. And it's all gone. So I'm going to sit now with you as we watch through my early moments, and we're going to do some commentary, and we're going to talk about this new DLC, and we're going to talk about Nioh. And it's not my intention to talk over this cutscene, believe it or not. I was sat in silence when I was listening to this, because I was just like, wow, we're back in Nioh, there's this plot happening. This is that wannabe Souls game that doesn't have, you know, the Souls crazy story stuff where you read items. You actually sit and listen to narrative given to you that's historically accurate in a weird and wacky way, but just not quite. But here is Masamune Date, or however you say that name. I used to call it Masamune back in the Final Fantasy days. He is, I believe, the main drawer of this DLC. For people wondering, you get about 3 main missions, and then you get maybe about 6 or 7 side missions to do. It's a good mix. It's a good mix of a lot of things. There's some new stuff, a lot of new enemies, which I'm kind of conflicted right now with the new enemy thing. There's 2 new enemies, and everything else are just colour palette swaps, which I find to be quite confusing. There is a snow variant on the Cyclopses, who does nothing new. Absolutely nothing new at all to justify him not being a normal Cyclops. There's no ice-specific move. I have no idea what they did with that dude, but that's a bit weird to me. However, he's there, so if you want to see a nice white Cyclops instead of the other ones, you can kill him too, so he's new, technically. Then you have a blue version of the ninja yokai, you know, the dude who jumps around and backflips, and he's got a gun, he's got a cannon. So he's actually really interesting and really new, because he does moves you recognise, and then all of a sudden he starts trying to get all gangster on you and shooting a cannon. So he's blue. I don't know if that has any significance, but, you know, he's kind of new and different. And then you have the technical new enemy, which is a creature who is a humanoid that when you do a certain amount of damage, they transform into this like snake-headed creature. And if you've got a good bow or a good gun, you can just headshot them and kind of keep them in bad positions and kill them and not have to deal with them. But if you get close, it turns into a pretty interesting encounter depending on the geometry. The final new enemies are those other yokai. There's 2 of them. One of them has double cleavers, the other one has a single larger cleaver. The double cleaver guy is kind of standard, predictable, but just enough, you know, new things to be a threat. The single cleaver guy is probably the hardest enemy in the game now, outside of maybe Raven Tengus, because I know people don't really like those guys. And the reason for this is just because he has a lot of moves that have a lot of hit radiuses that are very wide, very horizontal, and he can change his combos depending on where you are and depending on how close and everything. So he has mix-ups that can really hurt, and he takes a beating too, but you can break his horns, as you can with the other one, and you can take advantage of that as well. But that's pretty much the extent of the new enemies, and they integrate quite well. There's definitely heavy-handed on the new ones, but that's what people are looking for, right? So I don't think it'll be too much of a problem. But this is the end of the exposition. They're telling us, if you didn't read it, that Hanzo has been kidnapped as he's been looking into this Masamune guy, so we're going to come back to Japan and have a look. This is post the end of the game. So we're going to be going towards this first level, which is a snowy level, with a swamp, which apparently is where the Kappas come from, or it's some kind of origin story for the Kappas. And here we are guys, this is Tono, Mutsu Province. I'm trying to get used to the camera immediately, because the camera is way faster in this game than it is in Bloodborne, and I've been playing a lot of that recently. Frame rate is glorious. The buttons are fast and responsive and everything's weird. Everything is good in the world as I'm doing the pulses and trying to remember how to play it. It's been a while. To my credit though, aside from pressing the wrong buttons to heal a few times, pressing the wrong button to run, and that ended badly, and then pressing R1 to attack a few times, I didn't do too bad. You know, I did okay. The story of this DLC, for you wondering, is this isn't the character that I beat the main game with on my blind playthrough. He's level 100. This level is, I think, 160 or 170, so it's still considerable levels above me, but it's not New Game Plus. I didn't want to do it on New Game Plus because I didn't want to have, you know, ridiculous, brutal marathon sessions playing the DLC. Because Nioh's not really that kind of game for me, outside of maybe challenge runs and what have you. This is my equipment, if you're wondering. I've got a couple swords, I've got a couple dual swords, I've got a lot of weapons on me at the moment because I've been doing things. I've got a lot of money as well, a lot of various things. But my build, for all intents and purposes, is level 70, but I had to put those extra points into it to get the trainings unlocked, but I don't use any of the features that it gives me. And boom, right there we've picked up the new weapon, which is the Odachi. It is essentially a very long sword. So what this is it's kind of the axe equivalent of a sword. It hits quite hard, it hits quite slow, it's got really good range. There's a lot of moments where it feels like you're wielding a spear because you've got that much range. But it's kind of awkward and slow too. It's not the easiest weapon to use, and I'm going to use it for the entire duration of the playthrough. It's a stupid idea to do because my build scales with skill, and this weapon doesn't have any skill scaling on it at all, so the damage that I do with this is going to be subpar for the full duration of these videos. Combine that with the slow nature of the weapon and the fast nature of the game, it kind of comes to me as a strange choice for a DLC weapon, mostly because I don't know who's going to use this, except for people like me, who, it's new, so I'm using it because it's new. Like, there's a lot of situations where I think this weapon is strong, but there are a lot of situations where it just doesn't cut it. And the thing for me that really jumps out is everything that you achieve in this game, as far as being aggressive and being violent and being damaging, comes from your ability to be quick. I can't think of a single build in this game that I've seen or played where somebody has done more damage with a slow weapon than I've been able to do with fast weapons and aggressive play. So when you have this slower weapon, it combines into this situation of the entire time I felt like I could have easily done more effective jobs with anything else. And I don't know if that's the weapon, I don't know if that's because I'm not spec to it, and I don't know if it's because I didn't have all the skills. One of the downsides of not leveling is it's hard to get the scrolls to unlock a lot of the skills. So we're going to get a bunch of moves for it, and we're going to experiment with some of them, but I didn't have a parry, I didn't have many of the different, you know, interesting stuff to mix it up all that much, so it's just going to be me utilising spacing, going through the styles, and just finding the hits that I like and learning the timings as I peruse through some of the menus here. And what it seems like they want you to do with this weapon, if you read some of these descriptions, is it has a lot of attacks that go from one stance to another. And I think this sounds really interesting if the game didn't work like it works. And you might wonder, well, what do I mean when I say that? One of the more advanced techniques in this game that might not be immediately applicable, why you should use it or if you should use it at all, is the idea of swapping stances mid-animation. So I don't mean to condescend people who already know this, and I'm not meaning to speak down on anybody, but if you don't, this is a really good thing to know. When you swing your weapon, you can swap stances. Magic, right? Who knew? But the thing with it is, you don't get any benefit from stamina or pulsing or anything like that because you're doing it mid-animation. You're doing it through an animation so that your character doesn't do the animation. So what will happen is you can do a heavy triangle, swap to low stance during the animation of the hit, and immediately recover from the attack, dodge backwards with the low dodge that takes off less ki, and be way more effective. And this is a strategy that you can get into doing with almost any weapon. You can swap without the animation playing, mid-animation, and get a bunch of properties that you shouldn't have in certain stances. And if you combine this correctly, it can be really powerful. Whereas this weapon has attacks that do it for you, but they do it at the price of the animations. So you're moving between styles during attacks when you can already do that. The only thing I can think here is it's for the people who aren't technical enough to do that, or who haven't thought to do that. Like, I struggle to understand who it's really for. And then here's the game explaining that you can now have 2 guardian spirits. I have no idea what this is about. if you've seen my playthrough or my level 1 fists and knees only run of this game, you will know that I do not use living weapon. I would prefer if living weapon didn't exist in this game. My favourite aspect of it is the stat increases. I think the passives that they give you is really cool. I think the idea of having a win button that makes you invincible and do incredible damage and essentially turn off the skill requirement to play this game, I think that's against the very nature of what these titles are. At the same time, I appreciate that it's really fun to do it. You can get some crazy setups and do some awesome things. So there's a lot of people that love this aspect of the game and have got all these crazy builds and do all these wonderful things. I don't. I don't know anything about them. I never use them. I've used Living Weapon like 30 times, and I've put like 400 hours into this game or something silly. So I'm not the guy to ask. But in this DLC they give us 2. And you can swap between them on the fly. And I'm assuming this is for the people that complained or had issue with farming, where they would swap out their Guardian Force to do a very specific thing, and then they get stuck in a situation where they needed the other one or something. I'm not entirely sure what this is about, but you can now have 2. So I've gone with Kirajishi and I've gone with Kato, because they're the 2 that I use, because they give me skill bonuses and key bonuses, and you can swap between them on the fly by using a code in the game. Which I think is really cool, but I don't get it, and I don't understand it at all. Why it's there, what it's for, why you would want it, and then you'll fight a boss later on who pretty much validates why this mechanic now exists. Because I really didn't understand at this point like why they would introduce this. But here is our first environment. We move up here, there's a guy in the middle of the road, there's a guy with an axe who I take the head off. It does a nice 15,000 damage, and I believe this might be the introduction of the first enemy. So there's just a standard dude with a sword, he's a soldier like any other. I'm going to move in behind him, we're going to get an instant skill point for our new weapon, and I'm going to show you a couple of the hits. For the most, the squares do 3 hits with this, the triangles do 2. That's kind of the universal swings for the Odachi. And one of the things I really love about the weapon is you can counterpunch things you just can't counterpunch with other weapons. Because a lot of the swings are horizontal, and because it is so very long, you can keep out of the range of people, and then you can whiff what they do. I'm going to use a lot of that against a boss coming up, who's my favourite boss of the DLC. That will be blind, that, guys. I mean, this is blind technically, but of course the commentary is not. But once you get to that footage, I'm going to utilise this weapon's reach and just the way that the game plays to really punish what that boss does to me. It takes a while and he beats me up, don't you worry, but we get there eventually, and it shows where this weapon's really going to shine. Like, one of the areas where I don't think it shines is in its triangles in the mid-stance. When you press triangle in mid-stance, your character does a pirouette before he stabs. And normally you're thinking like, well, a lot of the heavy attacks do some kind of fancy animation before they begin. Look at the sword, the single katana. He does the twirl, he does the hit. But with this thing, the spin and then the stab, because all of it is kind of slow, it feels like you would have been better using square. And I rarely feel that way, because I'm a player who loves high stance. I'm a high stance machine. If it didn't roll in high stance, I'd universally use high stance. But you cannot do the dash, and I love the dash. It's my favourite evade. I spoke about it in this very section when we were doing those attacks just then. But I mentioned that if it was up to me, you should have to buy the skill that gives you the dodge, you know, the roll, after doing a dash, so that you could just dash without rolling. And I'm almost certain that they put that in there so that you couldn't spam dodge, but there are times when I'm not even spamming it, I just need to press it quite close together, and I get that roll and it gets me killed. And it'd be wonderful if you could turn it off. I would rather not roll than get that roll, if you get me. I'd rather just not be able to dash, and that would piss me off as well, because, you know, a lot of things do, but I just feel like it would be better. And then here is a developer placed Revenant. I wasn't online at this moment for whatever reason, which meant I didn't get to fight too many humans and get a better Odachi. I don't fight developer phantoms. I just don't think they're very fun. I prefer the human ones because the drops are better, and if I fight those guys I'm just going to get a bunch of purples, and I'm only really interested in divines at the moment. But we push up here, and this is it. This is the new enemy. Excuse me, I don't know the name of them, but here he begins. At range, he can fire fireball, he can do a fire stream, he can do a poison ball, he can do a poison stream, and he has 2 melee attacks, and that's the first of them. A ridiculous telescopic head attack. one of the best aspects of that move is that if you dodge it, you can hit it as it goes back past you and recedes back to his body, and you can do a nice critical on the face. If you shoot it, you will put him into a stunned state, but I don't think you can execute. I think you can only hit. And it comes out pretty quick. See it? In a better environment than this one, you can just run around him, and that head attack will miss every time. But do not mess with this body. This body has armor. You will not interrupt it unless you're doing something ridiculous. You have to respect it because it's going to hit through your attacks. And there are a few animations where when he attacks, he'll do something unique with the body, like the head will do a move, and then the body will do a move. So you need to be aware that both of them will attack. It's not just the head. It's a nice combination. But the gun makes really quick work of these enemies. And get used to them because you're going to be seeing a lot of them as he does his head move. I found out something really weird as well about the AI of this creature. You know, if it tries to do the breath attacks but it hits a wall, it'll keep doing it without actually doing the projectile because the projectile doesn't seem to spawn. So you can just keep hitting it and it keeps trying to fire stuff at you but it can't fire anything. It's really weird. It's going to happen later on and you're going to see it in the rest of the videos. But now he's dead. We've come off our first piece of new combat. Feeling pretty confident. For the most, I like the idea of this weapon, but the execution of it is where it lacks. There's a couple of bosses coming up later on that are incredibly fast. They're pretty much low stance NPCs, and when you're using something like this, and they've got armor and you don't, it feels really bullshit, and kind of awkward. And I don't want to talk too much about hyper armor right now, because I've just got off fighting the final boss of the DLC, and it pissed me off because of the armor. The boss can buff, and when they buff their sword, they get armor for whatever reason. She buffs her sword, and then you can't interrupt her. And I can appreciate why they don't want people spamming people down. But when you're doing 300 damage to a boss that's probably got like 20,000 life, it takes forever. And your weapon is new and slow, and I got really pissed off earlier. But I like this weapon, and I like the diversity. But if you look at this does not look like I'm hitting for what I should be hitting for with these enemies, right? This looks like a first playthrough where you don't really know how to make your character. And ironically enough, this character is a first playthrough character, but he's good at what he does. It's just what he does is not heavy weapons. But we take on the spear guy, we show him that we've still got our spacing, and we proceed to check our equipment. I really should have got rid of a lot of this equipment. But as I explained in the video, which was now lost, before I did this, I was trying to craft a level 160 weapon, and I must have crafted about 200 weapons, so my inventory was really filled. And you know what's super ironic? In this gameplay, I got a level 156 weapon, so it seems like the developers have just taken on board that rare glitch where weapons could overlevel, and they've made it a feature, because I've got a level 160, a level 156, a level 152. A lot of the loot now has leveled up to 160 to kind of accommodate for that rare anomaly. And I thought it was going to be super expensive, you know, to soul match to my other weapons that are my proper weapons, and it wasn't. It was like 8,000 gold, and I've got about 10 million or something stupid. I've got a lot of money. 67,000 glory on this character as well, which is preposterous, but there you go. And here is the swamp with the new Kappa enemy. So, this is technically a new enemy. It's a Kappa that throws paralyzing bombs at you, which I've christened the Bill Cosby move. And I hate this enemy. It was funny for about 10 minutes, and then after that, it's just really annoying. The Kappas are already an annoying enemy, and these ones are now worse. And they're worse because not only does this thing kill me in 3 hits when it does its claw combo, but everything it does paralyzes. And it just does this gay bomb move all the time. And it's just... I do not like fighting this creature at all. It's just not for me, guys. I like that it's new, and I appreciate what they've done to try and make a different Kappa, but I think that enemy was designed by people who hate people. Because it's not fun fighting Kappas, it never was, and the best case scenario is that one wanker in that pirate level that kills himself by running off the edge. Like, that's the only good Kappa, the one that kills himself. All the rest, dickheads. I christened them in this video Cunt Kappas. That was the name I gave them because that's how angry they were making me. And it's such a strange thing too, because they're very simple. All they do is when they get close, they can either do that double claw attack, they can do a grab where they poke you prostrate, or they can do the jump attack. and then everything else is bomb throwing. And if you get close to them, you can kind of bait the jump, and then you can punish the jump, and they get into these jump loops. And I was saying in the video right now, I'm not going in my menu and wasting paralytic needles on these shitbangers. I should have, but I didn't. I was also mentioning, can you hear the song playing right now? This song playing is the song from the intro of this video. It's my favourite piece of composition in this game, and the DLC doesn't even have its own music. It has the same songs that played in the main game, and this is one of them. And it doesn't bother me one bit, because I really like this tune, but at the same time, really, dog? A game that has like 5 pieces of music repeating throughout all of it, and they didn't even have new music for DLC? I don't know about that. That seems a bit rude to me. There it was. There's his prostrate tickler. Be careful of that. Prostate, right? Not rate. Rate is to lay down. There he does gain his stamina back, and we put him down. So this particular piece of DLC costs £8. 8 quid for this. The season pass costs 30 quid, I think. Or was it 20 quid? It might have been 20 quid. Yeah, it's 20 quid. And it's 3 pieces of content that are probably going to be equal to the size of this. I think it's a nice amount of content. It's a nice amount of footage of the game to explore and have fun with. There's 4 bosses, to my knowledge, in the main missions. There might be some side bosses in some of the ones I've not done yet. I haven't done all the side missions. The side missions themselves, pretty much the same kind of level that you should expect at this point. They're never going to blow you away, but they're still a fun distraction, and it's still more Nioh, which is a good thing. There's 2 new weapons, and you might be shitting the bed right now being like, oh my god, a second new weapon? Don't get too excited. It's just a palette swap. There is a different version of the dual swords, which is 2 kind of spiky meat cleavers, and I'm going to get it later on. Pretty cool, but it's still the same weapon. So, as much as I'd like to praise it, it's still the same thing. It's just a new skin, really. It's like the Claymore is to the Katana, as we fight more of these crappy Kappas. There's him trying to tickle me. Another thing, too, here, like, a lot of my feelings that you're going to see in this particular blind playthrough are going to stem from this weapon. I knew going into this that picking a slow weapon, a new weapon, was going to lead to frustration. Because it's just one of those things. I'm not a person who enjoys slow weapons, ever, really. Unless when I hit you with a slow weapon, it kills your ancestors, you're never going to impress me enough to want to use you. But I was hoping that the Odachi was going to be interesting enough to get me through it, and it did, you know. I think it's a good weapon, welcome to the pantheon of weapons in this game. I just think they should have done Tonfa, because let's face it, guys, when we get Tonfas, game over. There's no need for anything else. We've beat the game. Here's another one of those dudes. This is me highlighting just how easy they are to kill with the gun, but the gun is kind of OP. You know, I have a level 150 gun that's the prestige like 6 times or some shit. It does a lot of damage. And this is not New Game Plus, so that's something to bear in mind. I'm interested to see what New Game Plus is like, but I'm definitely going to be bringing my equipment, because that final boss with this weapon that I'm going to be using, 300 damage per hit, and it's not even taking like 1/20th of the bar. It's so depressing. Here's a tree shortcut. Don't know why. This early area is very heavy in shrines. The shortcuts are nice, but the shrines are pretty crazy. And then we have some yokai realm. There's a blob. He caught me off guard, but he didn't hurt me, which is nice. If you don't know the trick to the blobs, if you can bait the close quartered attack, wait, then attack, you can do a big critical on them. That was too fast, if you're wondering. And then once you do the crit, you can then crit them again, and you can kill them, but this was too slow. Look at that garbage. The execution on this move, the killing strike, is so slow apparently at that point that I didn't have enough time to finish it. You've got to be closer, it seems, which is unfortunate. But that move on the weapon I've got later on, I have 24% killing strike bonus, and when I do those ground stabs, it takes off an incredible amount of damage. As we get talked to here, and we're spawning a new dude, which is a blue tongue guy. And 2 shitty Kappas, oh my god. And you know what really sucks, right? These Kappas are worse than the other one. They're really annoying, but they don't drop shit. Like, I don't think I've got a single drop off these Kappas. And you'd think, right, I thought, and I said in this video, oh, this must be where they want us to farm Kappas now, because if you're anything like me, I never had any of those Kappa shells to do the crafting with. Just didn't get them, because I ignore them all. I don't kill them at all, because I think they're shit to fight. And I'm a mechanics guy, so if it's not fun to fight them, I'm not interested. So when we come here and there's tons of them, you're like, oh, this must be where the shells are. And either it's a really rare drop, or it's just not how I thought it would work. But I was explaining how you fight these blue guys, well, these tongue guys, technically. Liquor tongue men, as I call them. When he sprints at you, he'll do that right hook. It gives you enough time to do almost any move in the game and get away before he does anything else. It's the best move to bait, and it's the best move to punish. And you can just do nothing but punish that one move if you want to. But there's a trick here. If he's not running, he cannot do it half the time. He generally does it from the run, unless you're very close. And if you're very close, he'll do any of his other moves. You want him in the running animation. Once he starts that running animation, the only move he will ever really do is that right hook. It's almost guaranteed. And you just manipulate it and beat him up. And that's what I'm going to do here, guys. It's going to be quite slow, because, as I mentioned in a later video, my damage with this weapon, on this build, feels like SL1 damage. And there's an allure to that because it makes it feel more challenging, and I was kind of afraid I was just going to steamroll the DLC with this character. But I really don't. You know, I'm never in an opportunity where anything I've got completely bombards the enemies. There's a couple of choices for this as well that are on my part. You'll notice on the bottom left, I have Carnage, Weakness, and I have Elemental Talismans. I'm not going to use Carnage or Weakness for the majority of this, because I decided not to. And I appreciate that they've been nerfed into the ground, so they're nowhere near as redonkulous as they used to be. And that's unfortunate, and this was really scary. I got very lucky then. But at the same time, I didn't want this to be about me bringing a strong build and shitting on the DLC. If you've seen any of my DLC things for anything, you'll know that I generally try to have a pretty tough time, a pretty awkward time. And in this game, I was originally going to bring an SL1 character here, but the SL1 character that I had didn't have the skills that I wanted to use, so I decided to go with this guy. And for the most, I think it worked out quite well. I'll let you be the judge. You know, I can't be the judge. I was playing. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this DLC. And I'm happy with it. I'm really happy with it. My biggest criticism, if I had to have one, would be that there's only one monster boss. And you might not be too sure what I mean by this. Or, if you're wondering what I did here, I'm explaining that if you move when you do the what's it called? I forget the name of it. The sign of the cross move. It doesn't do it. He puts the weapon away. And there was a few encounters just then where I tried to do it, and I'm stood there holding the buttons, and my character stood there with his weapon on his back like a twat. And I was basically saying, if I could remove one thing from the game, it would be that. I think if you press R1 and circle, he should put the weapon away. If you hold it, he should start charging. And it doesn't matter if you're moving, or if you've just touched the analog, there should be no instance where you do not do that move. That's what I was explaining just then. And here's another shitty capper who's trying to build Cosby as with stupid fucking bombs that have ridiculous range. If you've ever thrown bombs in this game, you can't throw them like this cunt does. It's just such a dick of an enemy. Hate this enemy. It's nice that he telegraphs his bombs though, because he does his little scratchy head thing, and that means he's going to do the bombs. And you can kind of just manipulate the run. And I was talking a ton about the run, because I've been playing Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 a lot, and in Dark Souls 3, just like in Nioh, you can sprint while locked on, and I think it's the future of these games. I think Dark Souls 2 was on a frontier that none of the other Souls games were mechanically, and there is an inevitable death from a cunty kappa. So that was unfortunate. Ironic though, isn't it, that there's all these enemies we've been encountering and I die by that shitty thing? But for all the sins that Dark Souls 2 has, it created something that I think is the most useful, most effective and interesting method of evasion, which is sprinting. And it always existed, but you had to do it unlocked. When you can lock on, it completely changes the game. It does for me anyway, and I'm really, really fond of it. And Nioh has changed the way I look at avoiding attacks, and it's why I'm having so much fun with Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, because I'm doing things I wouldn't normally do. Instead of just looking at a move and iframing through it because I know the timings and I'm good at that stuff, I'm looking at it as, where can I stand where this won't hit me, but I don't have to waste my time doing a roll, so my punishes can now be way more effective, way more damaging than they've ever been. And that's exactly what Nioh taught me. Nioh taught me to look at everything from a sprinting perspective. And if you look on YouTube, there are people who've been doing this for a long time with these no-roll videos of Souls games. And I never understood the appeal to that. To me, that sounded counterintuitive and not very good. But when I watched a few of them, I appreciated what they were doing, because occasionally they do use spacing really, really well. Sometimes they just use the sprinting, which is incredibly powerful. But the idea of being able to get around things without dashing and then being able to attack in extra time because you're not on the recovery is something special to me. That right there, beautiful moment. I was holding circle to sprint, and then I tried to do triangle for a heavy running attack, and I active. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, that's right, isn't it? Circle, triangle. Yeah, that's what I did. I held Bloodborne sprint and pressed triangle, which is not what you do in Bloodborne, so I don't know why I did that. And I activated living weapon. And I don't use living weapon, guys, so that's why I didn't use it. Hilarious, though. Really hilarious. As I was saying, the sprinting stuff is fascinating to me now, because it's making me look at the space and move occupies much more deeply than I ever have before. And it's made me a better Souls player, it's made me a better Bloodborne player, and it's made me a better Nioh player. And now when I come back to this, and this game is so fast, and the sprint is so powerful, I'm just reminded of just how good this game is, and how well it's put together, and how powerful the tools it gives you are. You can be as strong as you want to be in this game, and that to me is incredibly special. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the DLC. It will be blind. I'm very sorry that I fucked up with this, guys. I don't know how it happened. How can a speaker be a microphone? Magic. But thank you for watching, and you take care now.